we are going to check back into the NWL division with an absolutely legendary matchup, Jared. It's Jackson Smylie trying to defend his top spot against none other than Axer Typo, Josh Sokol.
And Jackson, just like Adam in the Collins division, will likely only have to win one game in order to clinch this because of his big spread over Josh.
Yeah, Josh is needing those wins very badly to pass players who have the same, or rather, he cannot pass players with the same number of wins. He needs to tally more wins than the players around him. So very important for Josh's position that he win as many of these final two games as he can. Josh and Jackson should be ready to rock here to start this game, and you can see Josh with his Eric Rosen swag there, the "Oh No, My Queen" sweatshirt, repping out that Twitch presence there. So let's watch some Scrabble, I suppose.
Okay, and we will watch Josh play the end, leaving two vowels, but he does double that V and doesn't put a vowel next to a multiplier square. So that's a nice start by Josh. I see Noah suggested Navaid, Navaid, so that would double the D instead of the V, but it would only leave one vowel.
Yeah, I think that's a good play. We can renew the debate over opening vertically or horizontally at this point. But I think both of these players are. Is Jackson? Yeah, he is. We saw him
Yep.
play unban in a previous game vertically. So have at it in the chat, everybody. Debate on whether that's unethical or a crime against humanity or is the one true way of playing Scrabble.
Um, Jackson will, though, occasionally open horizontally, whereas Josh never will, seemingly out of principle. So I think the reasoning behind opening vertically is that most players open horizontally, so people think that it gives you a bit of an edge to start the game vertically, so it forms board shapes that players are a bit less familiar with. I think at these top levels, it probably doesn't make such a difference, but it becomes maybe a form of habit or even a form of pride. And so we are going to see a Verdi game, and now we're going to see Jackson look through this difficult rack with four vowels, a BK, and R.
Yeah, tough one. No bingos available here. Of course, Outbreak or something like that would be an absolute godsend to Jackson if Josh had played a T. No such luck. So I don't know what I favor here. I think for me, there are a lot of competing goals here that I'm not really sure how to balance. Looks like Kubi is going to be the play here. One of the goals that I was about to mention would be using those higher point tiles, the K and the B. The problem is, how do you do it without also using the E and keeping a balanced leave? So some pros to this play, some cons. I think it's a reasonable choice for sure here.
Yeah, like he could have played, I guess, Awk if he wanted to save that E, but then he'd also be saving the B. I think he was looking for a bit of tile turnover here, and he's going to be happy with that draw. Getting some nice tiles. But Josh has the first blank. Unfortunately, with it, he has one of the consonants we don't tend to like, the W, and then five vowels. So you often see players play a word like a we when they have tiles like this, but there's not necessarily a great spot for it. This is going to be a pretty difficult turn.
Yeah, very much so. And Jackson is threatening Matadors at the minimum here. Whether or not he has other stuff, I haven't spotted it yet, but certainly a play that I don't know. It's going to be difficult for Josh to inadvertently block that D here. I feel like the reasonable options for him would be playing something like a vow through the V of Viand, or maybe even something like awoke through the K of Kubi just to get an extra vowel off the rack. Those feel like plays that I would be gravitating towards here, either of which would allow Matadors in response.
Yeah, like sometimes in Scrabble, unfortunately, you have to make a play you're not happy with. And Josh's main goal is to clear off some tiles to get towards a bingo. But in order to do that, he's going to really have to score very few points. He's reaching for that A, and yeah, Awoke is going to come down. This is probably the one that's going to increase his bingo chances the most going forward, so I totally understand this. It also opens different lanes of the board to ensure that should he draw into a bingo, he'll have a different spot to play it in.
It also introduces kind of an interesting choice for Jackson of course his play of Matadors still available for 64, but he has a more obscure bingo through that A of Awoke, which actually scores 10 more points. The only problem is that it also opens multiple triple lanes in pretty scary fashion, in such a way that, Jared, 10 points is a lot. I love to score 10 points more on any play, but a play like Tamarauz on the top of the board gives a huge spot back to Josh. I'm not sure Jackson's willing to take that risk.
Yeah, we were debating this when I was talking to you about how Ari tends to like to take the points, and I want to play a bit more defensively in situations like that. But I think here I would take the 10 points. It's opening up two different spots. I know that O is going to slot into a very dangerous position, but 10 points is a lot, and maybe he could get his own play to the top left. So we'll see what he decides to do here. I'm wondering if he's already seen both bingos and it's just debating, or if he's wondering if he's still looking for options.
Yeah, I feel like based on the way he has aligned his tiles, I feel like he sees that top bingo and is just kind of mulling what is he willing to give to Josh. And the answer is he's not willing to put an O directly underneath a triple word score and potentially get crushed by any number of high scoring consonants up there. Matador is a much safer positioning, and the first bingo of the game goes to Jackson.
And Josh, unfortunately, played off AWOE, and it looks like he basically drew all that and a U. So, not a good draw. Fortunately, his play of Awoke will set up his second W, and the downside, of course, is he's leaving three vowels with his blank. So, he's going to really have to hope to draw better than he did after his last play.
And looks like at a very minimum, Jackson will have Uzi to the O of O. Wow, that's very confusingly said. To the letter O of the word OWE. I think that's equally confusing. Jared, do you have any better way of phrasing what I'm trying to say here?
No, I'm enjoying someone else stumbling through their words instead of me for once. So, uh, yeah, Uzi looks like a good play. It would not be a great leave, however. The leave would be roll, so I guess that's not too bad. It just scores nicely. It gets rid of the Z. That's definitely the first play that I'm seeing. I wonder if there's anything else we're overlooking, however.
It looks like really the strongest scoring plays by far are either if you want to play Uzi for 48 points. I don't know why you would necessarily prefer Orzo, which would be very tasty, but significantly fewer points and still would keep the double L combination. So Jackson has ascertained that Uzi, which we do think is the best option here, is what he's going to play. And let's see if Josh is able to come up with a bingo here. There is one playable bingo here for Josh. And
Hmm.
God, that is so difficult to be in that scenario when you can search through the entire alphabet to try to find something, but only one of those possibilities gives you a bingo here. Oh man! And if Josh doesn't find it, he's going to allow door sill double double to Josh. So
Wow.
this is a huge gut check for Josh here.
Remember, yesterday Jackson was unfamiliar with if door case was a word, so we'll see if he's confident with door sill.
Point.
Also, with the one bingo, I haven't spotted it yet. I wonder. Oh, I'm now seeing it in the chat, so I guess the chat has found it. So Josh will have to look. The good thing for him is he's going to be looking in that spot first. You want to it's not going to quite be a double double, but you want to look through the S because that's where the highest scoring bingos would be available. So Josh still has plenty of clock. I think he'll be pretty methodical here and really try and make sure he's not missing it.
Yeah, totally agree. Josh is well aware of his strengths and weaknesses as a player. And I say weaknesses very relatively speaking. Josh is a player who is pretty complete in terms of his skill set. But if he is weak on anything, it would be that it might take him an extra minute or two to come up with the same words that other top experts might find instantaneously. So he's going to know that this is the right time to use that extra time. It looks like he is probably writing down some possibilities of what that blank could be on his score sheet. And as you guys point out in the chat, a Swager is the only bingo available to him here. And it happens to be critical that he find it.
Yeah, you really can't miss bingo. Some turns, if you make a miss, it might only cost you a couple points evaluation. If he doesn't find his bingo here, it's going to be a huge swing. First of all, it's going to cost him that 50-point bonus and delay a turn. But second of all, like you said, Jackson has a double double of his own lined up. So this would be over a 100-point swing in value if he's not able to come up with it. Sometimes games come down to one moment, and this really feels like very pivotal right now.
Question in the chat of is Jackson going to know door sill? He wasn't sure of door case. I absolutely feel like he is gonna see door sill here, and frankly, that rack is not very good. He's got two L's, two O's, all low point tiles, and only one place to bingo. If you take that place away, Jackson will be hard pressed to do very much with it. He's probably looking at a play like idle in the upper left of the board, making those overlaps alongside of a woke. Something like that is a far cry from a huge 90 odd point double double here. Um, so, yikes. A good point, though, by Stephen A17, Jared. You think that Josh maybe will manage to block a Swager? Oh, no. Yeah, it would. Something like
Yep.
vague would effectively block it.
It does look like the best non-bingo play, at least that I've seen so far. So I guess he could also play AREG, A-R-E-G, parallel or yeah, parallel to a woke. So that would be the other option, but I think he'd want to get rid of that U. So I do think vague is a likely choice if he doesn't find it. We can see that Josh has already used 4 minutes and now 20 seconds on this turn, and I think we could see him use even longer. Yesterday after the game, we spoke to him, and he was a bit upset with himself at how long he spent on certain turns and thought he maybe had missed bingos, but we encouraged him like some turns are just so important. You really have to use the clock, and this is definitely one of those turns.
Absolutely agreed. I do want to call out that there is some chance that Josh has already seen a Swager, but is simply spending extra time to make sure that he doesn't miss a double double through that S, the way that Jackson has with Dorsill, right? It's extra powerful if you're able to find a word that spans those two double word scores and multiply the point values of your word by 4. Every point counts in a game like this. It's not impossible to me that Josh has already seen a Swager, but is just looking for that extra powerful, not wanting to leave any point on the board here. So we'll see. I'm really at the edge of my seat to figure out what is he going to do here, and is he going to manage to block Jackson's massive play, which frankly, if he gets that down, it's going to be very difficult for Josh to come back.
Great point. Josh is just so deep in thought as Jackson sort of sits there like he's waiting for a bus. He's already decided what he's going to do next turn. He's either
Yeah.
probably
Oh,
playing Dorsal or, oh, did it come up?
man. I thought he
Uh,
had AGER lined up on his rack briefly. I thought Josh had that there. I was watching him shuffle tiles. Oh,
oh, there
there
it
it
is.
is.
No,
Huge.
he had it for a second. I'm not sure. You're right. He could still be looking for an even better play. He had it perfectly lined up, though, so that gives us hope that he is going to play it. This is tough. I don't know if he's just trying to do a bit of content here. I don't think so. I think he's just
Uh,
really trying to find it. And these two players know each other so well. They're very hard on themselves. They really demand perfection. So he would be so upset if he were to miss this. So we're really pulling for him to find it.
I agree with King of Lettuce in the chat. The idea just occurred to me that it's not a lock either, that maybe Josh saw a swager instantly, but that is the exact type of word that you could easily doubt the validity of. I myself, in our previous game, when we saw Josh Castellano play Drenchers, I was very impressed by how quickly he decided to play that. Drencher being a word that, sure, you could probably anagram that if I told you there was a bingo in there, but can you remember its validity in game? Josh might be having that same agonizing internal debate here about this word. We all know you can assuage, but can you be an assuager?
Yeah, good point. You can see Josh has set it back up, and he shook his head for a second. Now he's shaking his fingers. He's really considering it. And at this point, if it's the only bingo he sees, I think it's a good idea to put it on the board because even if it's not good, Jackson might not be confident enough to challenge it. But instead, he can't
Oh,
pull the trigger, and he's going to play vague. But at least in his case, it will block the double double. Jackson's eyes go up for a second, as if to say, "Oh no, how dare you!" And now he's just showing to the chat. I found it. I would have played it. So I
yeah.
like that. A bit of an ego flex there, perhaps.
So yeah, you guys in the chat are doing the cries of despair, the IEs of despair. Let's get some IEs in the chat for Josh. But of course, he retains decent chances here. He's drawn very, very well and managed to block Dorsil, so that's helpful. Looks like Jackson is getting ready to play Drool and Vager. I think that's okay. 24 points, leaving IL. I certainly like Idle a lot here for 5 more points. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I prefer this, and I really like that choice for Jackson.
Yeah, it scores five more, and on that reason alone, it seems like a much better play. So now Josh will have options either of like a bingo from the M, like migrated, or any of a number of bingos forming Vager. Uh, People are also going to be looking for bingos through that U of Vague and the S of Matadors. If he could find a bingo there, that would be really impressive, but that would be a really tough ask at the same time.
Yeah, that would be pretty incredible to spot a play there. Remember, though, Josh just took something like 7 minutes on that previous turn, and he's going to be aware of that time expenditure, and he's going to be trying to make his next few moves much faster. And granted, was a play that you guys pointed out, 82 points. I would note, though, that potentially even better scoring would be triaged, placing both the G and the D on double letter scores. That's a very, very minor mistake. It's just 2 points left out there for Josh. Let's just hope he doesn't lose this game by 1 point. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's what happens when you spend so long on the previous turn. It can definitely lead to mistakes later on. As Jackson has drawn into his own bingo of Roylier, it's going to score nicely, but it's also going to hang a very juicy meatball, that triple word score next to the ER, which Josh is going to hope to draw tiles to
wow.
capitalize on. And so far,
Look
his
at
tiles are
these.
looking pretty good. Needs a vowel. Oh, he got it.
Oh, huge, absolutely huge final pick of the E there. That's going to give Josh
Wow.
a huge, huge rejoinder to this play. Going down, that is an enormous draw for Josh here to keep his hopes alive. He can play any number of bingos. Something like Remands will score nearly 100 points in that spot if he's willing to be patient. A play like Dammers, Damners, will score 101 points in that spot, making overlaps, Jared. Wow. Big
Yeah.
swing.
It really shows you how much luck can be involved in Scrabble. Because if that last tile was anything else, like a T, another consonant or something, it would change the entire game. Instead, because of the E, the all valuable E shows up, it leads to a play worth over 100 points. and I'm confident he's going to find Damners in the best position here.
There it is. That's it. The Bliss is the highest scoring move by a few points. So, unlike with Granted, where he left a couple points out there, this one is the highest scoring move. 101 points, which vaults him pretty sizably into the lead. He's going to be up by almost 40 after this massive bingo, a huge swing in the game.
Yeah, one thing I really respect about Jackson is if you put down a big play against him, he just takes it in stride. He's just thinking about his next turn. He's not thinking about how unlucky it is that Josh just drew that beautiful rack. I've drawn really well against Jackson in tournaments and put down some big words like that, and he always just he doesn't seem to react in the negative. Instead, he seems to just stay focused on his move. And look at
And
Josh. He's
look
shaking his
at
head going, I don't deserve
that.
this.
Look at that. Josh drawing some beautiful stuff there. Jackson struggling with some high point tiles, the F, the J, and the P. He might be getting set to play something like Fuji through the U of Vagar. Not sure if there's any other better plays that use the J, maybe Freehold to the L of Roilier. That seems pretty good too. Either way, Josh is for sure bingoing on his next turn with this beautiful pick out of the bag.
Yeah, like I'm close friends with both these players, so I'm definitely rooting for both. But because uh, Josh winning would really keep the tournament live going into our last game, I think a lot of people would be very excited to see Josh win, so that that last game really means a lot.
Would set up an absolutely epic matchup. As looks like he is potentially getting set to play hopefully not Pilates, which is a very well known thing, but it looks like that not valid in Scrabble. I should make clear. But he will have his choice of bingos in a few different places on the board. I think the best of which is the very impressive Platies underlapping all the way through Matadors into
Wow.
Vians. That
Yeah,
would be pretty cool.
I think Josh is really good at finding plays on obscure spots on the board, difficult spots to find. So he can definitely unscramble those seven letters, making that an S, into the different possible bingos like Paleist and Aplites and some of these obscure words that only people who have really studied the game might know. So he will know that word Pleiades. I think it's a fish. Unfortunately, okay, he started to put down the P to play a bingo through the R of Matadors, but maybe he's going to take a few more seconds to find this key highest scoring bingo. And Jackson, look
Yeah,
at that rack. Not going to be
Jackson
happy after Josh's bingo.
and torturing Jackson is the fact that that M of Matadors would potentially combine beautifully with his rack, his terrible rack, to form a bingo of Europium, but it's not going to fit, obviously, in that position with the M, which would need to be significantly lower down. But yeah, other than that, not a good rack for Jackson, and Josh is about to bingo again. I'm going to guess that that blank is a B because he's
Oh,
not
okay.
wanting to allow an S hook to go down there with two more S's to come. I think this is almost certain to be partable unless he has some doubt. Of course, it could be a C as well, Jared. I think these tiny little nuances do end up mattering sometimes.
Right. And the C is much easier to double through, which might be a concern of his because an 80-point bingo back could definitely hurt. Uh, So it could be either one. Particle would be a bit more common of a word. Partible would also be good for the reason you mentioned it doesn't take the S. Roilier also doesn't take an S, as that's a word that compares Roilier, Roiliist. So Jackson now is finally starting to show some disappointment as he lies back like he's on a beach bed, staring up at the sun. The board is in front
That
of you,
is,
young man.
yeah, that is not the best. That is not a power pose, let's say.
No. Okay, he's going to wake back up. He just needed a bit of a cat nap. He realizes that this game, his winning percentages with that rack and this score have really dropped below 10%, probably even below 5% if I had to guess. But if anyone can claw their way back, it's definitely my mentor of the game, Jackson Smylie.
Yeah, it's very just endless resources of creativity and the ability to concoct those outlandish plans to come back in games that most people would simply accept are lost. That is definitely a hallmark of Jackson. I feel like it's also a hallmark of Josh, to be honest. Both of these guys, two of the most creative, thinkers that I'm aware of in the Scrabble world.
Yeah, and we're getting confirmation from the other Josh, Josh Greenway, that the blank is indeed a B. So he played the word partible, the more defensive choice, and no surprise there. Will, you were all over that decision.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that is, the resulting board. Like you said, roilier an adjective, partible an adjective. You don't want to let your opponent have that easy S hook if you can avoid it. And Josh has managed to avoid it with that nuance there. Again, I keep harping on it. These tiny, tiny little variations in plays, right? Partible versus particle. Who cares? They score the same amount. The B and the C don't, putting that in that particular spot doesn't make too much of a difference. I guess it's fair to say maybe you also might like the B in that position as opposed to the C, but I don't know if that's true. You could get able words and stuff. The most important detail is that S hook, and Josh was all over it there.
Yeah, Noah Slackoff behind the scenes is quackling these games for us, and he's saying that Quackle, the computer program that runs simulations, wants Jackson to exchange here. Of course, Jackson needs to stay within a range. He's already down about 86 points, if my math is right, and so scoring zero would put him in even more trouble. But what play is he really supposed to do here? Like you have two U's, you got to get rid of at least one of them. You want to get rid of that O if possible. Jackson's so creative. I'm interested to see. He has umpire set up here. That makes a lot of sense, but it's getting rid of five tiles and leaving OU. I just don't really see much of a path to victory, especially because umpire is going to start to interfere with some of those floaters in particle.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, maybe your pathway after umpire holding OU is potentially maybe you draw the Q and maybe you draw some type of play that lets you set, maybe you draw QS and you can make some kind of a play that lets you play your Q somewhere and set your S up, right? Like there's no D's left to draw. But for example, if you play umpire and then draw the queue and play something like Quid, setting up Equid and Squid, something like that. I really don't know. This is a cool choice, Jared. What do you think of Puri? I think I understand why he's done this.
Yeah, I get the idea. He puts the P out there in the first position to go for a big bingo down from the P. He's going to just have to hope to draw three consonants, and if he does, perhaps that's a path to victory. Um, he drew an S, which is big, but he also drew an O. He needed one more consonant, so his plan almost came to fruition. I think he at least gave himself a path to victory, whereas I don't think umpire necessarily could ever really win. Like even the SQ idea, I don't really see where it was going to hit after Josh made a blocking play.
Yeah, Josh's play there of Venine, beautiful play. I think the resulting board after Partible, the only thing that Josh probably regretted was the fact that there still was that open E to bingo to, a very, very good bingo tile. Josh has closed it off and managed to use three of his six consonants there. And I think that's a beautiful play, Jared. Venine.
Yeah, he only has four tiles. Oh, okay. For a second, I thought maybe the play was held. He's just taking his time drawing the tiles. Jackson, it's mentioned in the chat that he only needs one bingo to catch up. It's true, but there's also the tempo to consider. Josh has the tempo even after Jackson's bingo. But what we like about setting up that P is that if he bingos there, all of a sudden the bingo could be worth about 80 points as opposed to some of the other 70-point bingos that would be available on the board. The one big spot otherwise is also that words ending in able, like you mentioned, now that the blank is indeed a B.
Yeah, for sure. That P up there, in addition to scoring 80, would also potentially open a new bingo lane too, depending on what that last letter of your 8 letter word with a P is.
True.
Of course, time's running out here. Bingoing twice is going to be increasingly difficult to impossible as the number of unseen tiles continues to dwindle. But this is a cool play by Jackson here of Ono setting up an S hook that's kind of annoying for Josh to block.
Yeah, Jackson's really making it difficult for Josh to block. And when we mentioned how Jackson's one of those players who can find a way to claw back in, he's really doing it. Um, he's just going for that bingo in two different spots. And what he realizes is he doesn't just need a bingo, he needs a high scoring bingo. Unfortunately for him, his draw here was the very uncommon draw of HH.
Yeah, how about that? Two H's out of the bag at once. Not a draw you see every day, especially with only two H's in the set of Scrabble tiles. So, one H paired up with some other draws there with that leave for Jackson might have been okay, but two of them together is going to necessitate another turn waiting to bingo. But I'm sure with the H's, he'll at least be able to score something somewhere.
Yeah, and Josh has a very difficult position. He doesn't know that Jackson just drew HH and isn't going to take that spot. He's really looking for a way to block, but he also has the problem of having two C's here, which are very difficult, especially in the endgame, as you can get C stuck, and he hates that G, as do many top players. So he really is not happy with his rack. He'd love to find a way to get rid of a lot of tiles, but if he gets in a lot of trouble, with his own rack, this could be one way where Jackson could win without two bingos, where just one bingo could possibly be enough.
Yeah, it is a bit of a gut check moment here for Josh. I said that before with his assuager turn. But this one is one of those moves where in Josh's position, you're saying to yourself, man, I'm up by nearly 100. My opponent is very, very resourceful. He's going to be pulling out all the stops to figure out a way to come back in this game. And the thoughts that are going through at least my head in situations like this, sometimes I say to myself, oh man, I'm really not going to lose this, am I? And you go down this rabbit hole and your decision making becomes a bit compromised when you're in a tough, tough spot like this, which is part of the reason why a play like Ono is so powerful for Jackson.
Right. When you're behind, you always want to complicate it for your opponent. And Josh is going to play set here, CETE, taking out those down lines of the MAT of Matador and the A as well, the second A. Also, it obstructs the I of Partible. So it leaves the big lanes open, however, the P of Puri and the S hook to Ono, and he leaves three heavy consonants with that draw. But he's going to draw well enough that he's looking to be in a pretty good position here.
Yeah, I think to your point, Jared, that did not block the biggest threats on the board. But if you can't block the biggest threats, at least you can block some stuff that ends up mattering here. You never know what Jackson might have had there. To your point, something to the I of Partible, the M of Matadors. But Jackson is able to cash in those two H's that he just drew for 30 points and start to inch his way closer to a point where a bingo that he might get will actually matter in the game.
How many are in the bag? Because I see calcify as perhaps a possibility, but not if you were to empty the bag, I don't think.
There are 6 tiles in the bag.
Ooh,
Calcify would empty, but what about Uglify from the U of
oh, even
Puri?
better.
So that would be absolutely a clinching play here, I think, leaving one tile in the bag and scoring incredibly well. And
Great
Jackson's
idea, though.
drawn. Look at what Jackson's drawn. He's drawn a rack that looks really good, but there is no playable bingo, at least not a 7 that I see with this rack here.
Nor is there an 8 from the P like puntiest, which is not good. So I don't think Jackson quite hit. Two turns in a row, he left the same leave. He played off those H's again, and he left UNIES, I believe, or maybe he had one of the T's, but I remember he left the exact same leave two turns in a row, and both times he didn't quite hit what he needed to hit. So
Yeah.
tough luck for Jackson.
Yep, it is a tough one. If you're Josh, I think the gulf between Uglify and other plays is pretty big, but I also think that there are any number of things that Josh could put on the board here and have extremely strong winning chances here. He's in a very, very strong spot this late in the game. I guess it is worth noting that we don't see that on Jackson's rack, but still lurking in the bag are both the Q and the X. Those are kind of complicating factors. There is no doubt in my mind that Josh sees that, and he is going to be hell bent on not emptying the bag because that would open him up to potentially get bingoed out on and eat those points for the Q and X on his rack. That's really one of the few ways he could lose this game here.
Right. Like that would be the risk of something like Calcify if he were to then draw the Q and the X and then get hit with a bingo from Jackson and he would lose. But Uglify, keeping one in the bag, prevents that. And the good thing is there's an I in particle where the Q could go. And also after Uglify, he'd be forming another I where the Q could go. So the X, however, seems to have limited spots if he were to draw both the Q and the X, which is surprising. Normally, an X is a pretty easy tile to plunk down. Are you seeing any other spots besides those I spots I mentioned?
Not really. Oh, here it comes.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Phenomenal. Great
Um,
job. I wonder if he just saw that. Do you feel like that was like an epiphany type situation where he saw that play and said, okay, I got to play this? Or was he considering options and ideas there?
I'm not actually sure, but was he held here? He lifted his two tiles off the rack, I thought. Jackson
Yeah.
might be holding. It's a bit of a strange word to know for sure that it's good. Yeah, he did take his other two tiles off, so I do believe he's on hold. And Jackson, knowing that he's not going to be able to win if it is good, might have to challenge. But he also, remember, knows that if Ari wins two games, Ari's spread is within catching distance. So he's going to have to make a really difficult decision here.
I agree. I just feel like there are a lot of variants of Uglify that you might have seen if you study the Scrabble dictionary the way players at Josh and Jackson's level will be doing, right? You would see Uglify, but you would also potentially see Uglify's Uglified, and I believe even Uglifier is a valid word. So I would be surprised to see a challenge here, especially given the nuance that you just mentioned, Jared, that every point does count here for Jackson as he has Ari lurking in third place, potentially able to overtake him.
Uglifier. Wow, I just added that to my card box as we're speaking because I would have challenged that one pretty quickly. That sounds uglifying.
True. We can cut to the Jackson POV of tracking if we would like to, just to see what he's looking at. So you can see one tile in the bag. Um, Not great tiles there, of course, for Josh. I guess one thing to worry about is if the C or X is in the bag, Josh would have kneecabs and onos at that base of the board for a very, very big score. So I wonder what Jackson's going to do. I doubt he feels like he can win this game at this point, but maybe he'll feel like he has to address that scary threat that Josh has down there.
He also just might be afraid of QI next to uglify, so he could just drop maybe one of his T's there. And then if he were to draw like an A, for example, he'd have aunties in two spot. Um, or he'd still have tunnies as a possibility at the bottom. He doesn't know for sure that Josh has the other S. You can see Josh is still in hold, meaning that Jackson might still challenge here. The two other tiles are separated from the five that he's now drawn. Josh's body language is looking a lot happier knowing that he's in a good position to win here, and that also probably signifies he's very confident on Uglify being good. Uh, Interesting to see what Jackson does here. I think he realizes his winning chances have passed him, and now he's probably just trying to hang on to that spread.
Yeah, it is an interesting call. What is certainly the QI spot alongside Uglify is the more salient threat. But the Niqab's play down low would be even more damaging if Josh had it, which is less likely. So anyway, it doesn't look like a challenge there. And the bunties draw, oh man, that's amazing. Jackson clearly fishing for it, and he set it up in two places, and it looks like Josh has already worked out that that is not going to be blockable here. Two different spots for it, one alongside Uglify and one at the base of the board with Onos. What a great play by Jackson to
Bunties?
make. Yeah, I think that's a word. Oh, it's not
I
good.
don't.
Oh, okay. Never mind. This is odd then. For some reason, Jackson and I are on the same wavelength that we thought
Yeah,
this
look
was
at
word.
Josh's face. That was a like disgust, a
Oh,
look of disgust. Like I expect better than better from
yeah.
you, Jackson.
I guess I had thought it was NWL, but maybe it's just a Collins adjective.
Okay, you're getting trolled by the chat again, Will.
Oh,
I see
it's
that.
no good in anything. What am I thinking of then? Okay, never
Uh,
mind. So somehow, I got my wires crossed there, but
okay, normally when you suggest something and I don't know it, I just assume I don't know it. But this time it would have been so high prop, it just looked terrible to me.
oh,
Punties, maybe
okay.
you were thinking of.
Yeah. Well, so bunty is a Collins word, but it's an
Okay,
adjective. So I guess I'm still wrong on that score. But anyway, some I don't know whether Jackson will find solace in the fact that I also had the same idea there. But either way, even if that were a valid word, the Josh's final play certainly scored more than enough points